Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska Show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. And boy, do we have a special treat for you today. But before we go into that, I want to thank everybody who listens, watches, and reads Must Read Alaska. We do this to spread conservative news all in the nooks and crannies all over Alaska. And we're funded by everyday folks that really, really care about conservative news here in Alaska. We're not funded by some big dark web nonprofit conglomerate. It's $5 donations, $10 donations, $100 donations at a time. And if you want to help contribute to keep the lights on here at Must Read Alaska, just go to mustreadalaska.com and click on the right-hand side there. There's a little donate button. And we appreciate every donation we get. If you already do donate to the Must Read Alaska Show, we want to thank you for doing that. It's near and dear to Suzanne and I's heart, every $5 gift that we get. So without further ado, I want to welcome a very special guest to the Must Read Alaska Show. Mayor Bronson, welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show.
Thanks, John, and thanks to Must Read for this great opportunity. Appreciate it. Good to talk to your listeners.
Well, I'm sure people are chomping at the bit to hear from you. I think that the city of Anchorage has some exciting things down the pipeline, which we'll talk about later. But the first question, let's get out of the way, because I know that people have been asking you right and left. There's a lot of talk out there with employee personnel matters. And I know that being from working as a chief of staff in a borough, that you can't really talk about that kind of stuff. It's not appropriate. So tell us a little bit, what your guys' stance is on that. I'm sure it's similar to what happened at the Kenai Borough when employee personnel matters would come up. We just couldn't talk about it. My guess is that that's the same case here.
Right. You've said it all in the government world, in the corporate world. When personnel issues come up, my job is to protect all the employees, and we fight quite heartily to protect their privacy, no matter what the issues are. And we just don't talk about it at all. I know it's frustrating to the public, but I apologize, but we will protect the privacy. We are required to protect the privacy of all of our employees, and I take that task very seriously. So you don't want to hear no comment, but at the end of the day, when it comes to personnel issues or even legal issues, it's just no comment.
Yep. Well, I think that that's a smart move, because what folks don't want in their cities is mayors going around blabbing about all their employees. So I think it's a good, that's that good option to take. So let's talk about some exciting stuff. So let's talk about the port first, because one of the things that, as you came in to being the mayor, and one of your things that you had talked about on the campaign trail was the fact that Anchorage has a port that affects pretty much all of Alaska in terms of their food coming in. Tell us some of the things that you and your administration have done to potentially shore up that port and make sure that Alaska is set up for success in years to come.
Well, campaigning, I always knew that the port was a problem. I didn't have the particulars. We were focused on homelessness, crime, COVID recovery. When I got into office, it was moments when all of a sudden I get a briefing on how significantly in trouble the port is structurally. It's coming up, it's at its service life. The pilings are corroding terribly at a certain bandwidth at the tide line. And there's places where there's about 1,400 pilings where you can put your finger through the piling. It's that corroded. You don't see that at high tide, of course, it's below that. And during the earthquake of 2018, we learned that the port, had that earthquake gone about 7 more seconds, the port would have failed. And when it was explained to me by the engineers and the economists and everyone else that what failure of the port means, structural failure, it would have fallen off downhill into the inlet. The thing to remember economically is that 90% plus of the people in this state, or 100% of everyone who's not in Southeast, relies, nearly 100% rely on that port for everything. That is food, materials, everything. So if that port fails structurally, it could take months, if not more than a year, to get back up into partial operation. So, you know, we have 4 ships a day, or excuse me, 4 ships a week that come in, 2 tow, 2 Matson on Monday or on Sundays and Tuesdays. Everything we have comes on those ships pretty much, you know, except for the Amazon stuff that may come by aircraft. And those ships, that capacity is not replaceable. You can't just say we're going to do some kind of Berlin airlift and we'll supply it with 747s. The numbers are pretty extreme. It's over 700 747s a week to replace the volume.
Jeez. That
in those. So you can't do it because no one in the world is going to give up their freighter capacity to help us. It's our problem, so it has to be our solution. And the solution is to, and we're in jeopardy right now. Another earthquake right now. I'm looking at the port. If we got a bad earthquake, the only thing I ask is what's happening at the port. Is the port still standing? Because if the port fails, our best guess is at least half the population of the state is going to have to leave the state, at least for a while, because we run out of food. We only have 5 to 6 days of food on the shelves. We learned this last year. We had some pretty barren shelves at times when we got into the supply chain issue. This is that times exponentially more. So it's my job. The port is owned by the municipality. It's directed by a director who works for me, so it's my responsibility. So it's what we did last year in the legislature. We went down and we secured the largest appropriation ever in the history of the state, $200 million from the legislature. The legislators did a great job, and for that port, the Port of Alaska here in Anchorage. And then we've got a MARAD settlement, which is, we haven't got the final number yet. We won the MARAD, that's called Marine Administration. There was a problem from several years ago in a lawsuit. That's up to $367 million. And then We've got, and then just recently, due to the work of Senator Sullivan's office, we've got a little less than $70 million in a major federal appropriation for ports, just for ports. And of all the ports in the United States, Anchorage got the largest appropriation. And that was a little bit less than $70 million. That was huge. So we stack all this money. And then when we get to a certain point, and that point is $1.1 billion by third quarter of 2025. Once we get to that point, we can start the construction project, which kind of works from south to north, and we get our 2 docks in place. It's from the sky, from the satellite view, it's going to look pretty much like the same port. But once we get one dock, just one seismically secure dock stood up, then we have what we call food security. So that threat of people leaving the state, being compelled to leave the state, that threat diminishes. Because then the 4 ships, instead of coming in 2 and 2, they would have to share, and they would use one dock, so 4 days a week. Takes about a day for each ship, and we can reschedule that and make that work. So that took a lot of our focus, and I had to pivot from homelessness, from just about everything. You always have to have a big one on the top thing on your list. That became that. But early on, I restructured how the construction project was going to go. We gave it to Jacobs, control of that project, and they are doing a great job. We're seeing the phasing shorten up a little bit, and so we're saving time. I'm as focused on time, that is to get us one seismically secure dock stood up, as I am on the money. So people know on the money side, the entire project right now is at about $1.8 billion. we have to have $1.1 billion in the capital stack by third quarter of 25 to begin the process, which gets us the whole project finished. But at some point,
it gets you order in the metal and all that kind of
yes,
stuff. Yeah.
yes. So we're encouraged. We're going back to DC here in a couple months. We're going to be asking for more federal money. We're going to be asking for probably $300 million. And then at first quarter or third quarter of 2025, we have to make a decision on what our surcharges are going to be to make up the balance. Because again, I'm looking at the calendar. This has got to be done. It's an existential threat, not just to the city, but to the state itself. And then we will bring on surcharges. Some people call them a tariff, but they're a surcharge. And once we stack that money and we get the committed revenue stream for the construction project, we'll be turning dirt, driving pilings and welding and all the stuff it takes to make it work.
So you're close. You got $1.1 billion ish. What do you think realistically? Do you think that $300 million is out there somewhere in the feds? And my guess is that's why you're going to DC in a couple months or this year.
Yeah, I'm going to go there to beg and borrow, and my goal is to get from what we already have to what we need, the 1.1 by 25. That's our intermediate target to get, so we can complete this whole project in a very in as fast as we can for the good of the people of the state and the city.
So talk to me a little bit about. You touched briefly on this before, but I think this is very important because I've had conversations with folks about the port, and somebody's response to me was literally, I don't really care about the port. I buy my groceries at Walmart. So talk to us, like go back down to the basics and explain to folks why that this actually affects everybody. Because honestly, you know, you and I connect the dots, and some other, you know, it's easy for other folks to connect the dots, but you know, people are busy. They're running their kids around to soccer practices and they're juggling 10 different things, and they don't sometimes connect the dots why this affects that.
Well, I'm always looking at keeping it as simple as possible, and no dock, no food, no nothing else in crude terms. If there's no food flowing into the state at a certain volume, regular volume, or supplies and repair and parts for our equipment, to include our drilling equipment, to include our support equipment, our graders, our bulldozers, our excavators, our personal vehicles. We saw in this last year what the supply chain interruptions did. This will be isolated, but it'll be all focused. It'll be isolated on Alaska. And I'm telling you, just because you think you buy your food from Walmart, that's not going to help you. There's a little bit of stuff that gets trucked in, but the volume it's
teeny.
Yeah, it's microscopic.
So let's switch gears for a second. I think it's important to chat about some of the snow stuff in particular, because some of the chatter I hear is bus stops related and downtown Anchorage related. So talk to us about specifically Snowmageddon happened. We all know it happened. It's 6 feet of snow or whatever it was, and a couple of different times that it dumped. Almost impossible to keep up with, even on the Kenai Peninsula. We have probably way less roads, especially paved roads. We have 99% of our roads on the Kenai Peninsula are just dirt. And it was still a chore for the roads service area to keep up with. People were working, 20 hours a day and still couldn't keep up with it. So I'm sure the same happened in Anchorage, but talk to me specifically about bus stops in downtown Anchorage and what some maybe solutions are down the road for that.
Right. Well, the bus stops are for buses that are owned by the municipality. But on all the major streets, a lot of the bus stops are on state roads, state-controlled roads. And just think of it, major roads are state roads, even in downtown. And so we are working with the state to come to an agreement where we can come in and clear our bus stops on their streets. And we just really can't go in there and do that. It's call it a jurisdictional issue. And then the snow removal from the storm itself, it couldn't have happened in a worse timing. We had basically 3 storms, and they were roughly 3 days apart. So the people know, and I really want to get this message out. We have a requirement that when we get a certain snowfall, we have to go in, and there's essentially 3 kinds of roads. There's arterials, which are the big ones. Some of them are, in fact, many of them are the states. Then there's connectors, which connect the arterials, and then there's residential. So when we get a certain amount of snowfall, we have to start with the arterials because that's public safety. That's what gets us to our hospitals and police stations and fire departments, buildings. And then we go to the connectors, and then we go to the residential. Was what happened. The snow fell in such a sequence that about 3 days after the first snowfall, we had to start all over and pull out of the residential and go back and start that phasing all over again. And then we were just getting into the residentials, and then we got the third snowfall, and then it all started all over again. Well, the snow is piling up in the residentials. My cul-de-sac, I still have a mountain in my cul-de-sac from snow. It hasn't been removed. If we would have had 4 or 5 days between the snowfalls, it would have been an entirely different picture. So, or if we would have got one giant snowfall, I think like Buffalo did, then it would also have been different. But then again, Buffalo, I think 27 or 28 people died in that storm, and we didn't have that problem. Our crews have done remarkably well. I wanted to get some updated numbers from Paul Van Landingham, who is the supervisor of all that. He has been working diligently, long hours every day for a long time since the snow hit, and we can't get a hold of him because he's working. He's out there supervising.
He's out there doing the job.
And it's still going. Now we're not into snow plowing so much as we are into removal, and that's a completely different process. That requires a lot of dump trucks, a lot. And we actually, for the first time, went to side loaders, and that's turning out to be interesting and positive because the side loaders can carry a little over twice what a dump truck can. So we can move for the same amount of gas or diesel, we can move the same amount of snow, and it speeds up the time. The only difference is when you get to the snow dump, the snow has to be handled a little bit differently by front end loaders and bulldozers and excavators there. But the crews are doing a great job. If someone wants to blame someone, blame me on snow removal. I'm not involved in it like people say. Somebody says I got 36 school buses stuck. I've got blisters from driving school buses. Not really. Just the credit, all of the credit goes to Paul and his crews. I've been out on the street with them. I've interviewed them. I've talked to them. Great people, fantastic people, and we owe them a great deal of thanks for what they've been going through this last
and you
month.
got a couple videos. We'll put it in the episode description of some of the snow removal stuff so people can check it out. And I think that I think it's a good thing that you're going to work out some agreement with the state, because oftentimes those are the two things that people that the paper, the newspaper in Alaska will point shots at is, what about the bus stops and what about the downtown streets? Well, people don't realize those are owned by the state. So I think if you had some sort of long-term agreement with the state, even short-term, couple of years, I think that's going to be super beneficial. And
part of the problem is we have the phasing. So we've got, say, Downtown Partnership, possibly ACDA, but Downtown Partnership where they have no place to put snow. They take snow from their sidewalks, put it into the street or into the parking spots. And when they do that before we plow, that's fine. But after we plow, and then they put stuff into the streets, then we have to go back again. And a lot of those streets again are the state. So we're trying to coordinate that. And it's just the volume of snow is the issue. We're going to do a video out at a couple of the snow dumps. These people are seeing these mountains run. I think we've got 7 snow dumps or 6 or 7 snow dumps. We're trying to get some more. They're just absolute mountains. And I'm thinking what's going to happen in September.
Yeah, that's a lot of water to be melting.
Well, yeah, I mean, are they going to be completely melted? And at these extreme, this is a once in a 40-year snowfall that we had.
Yeah.
And we've got the numbers that are just handed to me. We've done 59,000 truckloads. We've done 1.18 million cubic yards. That's as of the 2 days ago on the 25th. And it's a lot. I mean, it's the volume that was the problem.
So you're not sitting around twiddling your thumbs. You guys are out there working your tails off, is my guess. And, having some experience with government, I know that when it snows, the guys and gals that plow or remove snow, they're out there. It's just very hard sometimes to keep up, and especially with the storms we just had. So, there's always...
And now we don't see it now that it's got warm, but we spent a lot of time. We're working with the assembly on reappropriations, on trying to get more money, find out how we can, there's conversations at the assembly level on Tuesday night about contracts for, it creates stress on the system, and people want this removed, and we've got to pay for it. We just do.
So let's talk real briefly about downtown development. I know that, if people drive downtown, they can see literally old buildings being taken down and possibly new buildings being built starting this summer. Talk to me about what's happening downtown. What could people see happening this summer, and kind of what's in the works for the next couple of years?
Well, in the big picture, we have over $300 million worth of construction already scheduled for downtown. The big part of that is Block 41, just 2 blocks away from here, between 4th and 5th. And that was the 4th Avenue Theater, that being torn down. It's a big project. It's a good project. I've seen some of the artist renditions of it, and it's going to change the face of downtown with the living space that they're creating, from hotel to residential to retail to connectors, indoor connections. There's a tunnel involved, so we're going to connect various buildings. So our goal is to get to a point where a lot of our hotels, or the hotels that we can, get them connected. So in the wintertime, you can come and you can go to dinner, you can go to your hotel, or you can go to a show at the PAC, which is right there. And it's all connected. It's kind of like Minneapolis or I believe Winnipeg, but we look at Minneapolis. We like the way they do it. It's all indoors, and you can just literally live your life indoors and stay warm in the wintertime in a cold climate.
That's awesome. Well, Mayor, I really appreciate you joining us here on the Must Read Alaska show. Is there anything that we missed or that you want to say before we take off here? The floor is yours.
Well, I want to be quite strident in my support of the snow removal folks right now. I came into this office a year and a half ago not knowing much about government at all, but this is what I learned. The quality of the employees that this municipality has. I grew up in the Air Force and the airlines, where I thought that was good people. And it certainly was, especially in like the Air National Guard here in Alaska. But the quality of people that we have working for us in this city, from police to fire to road maintenance to parks and recs, we have the finest people I've experienced in my work history. In my 45-year work history. I am stunned. I am pleased, and I can't say enough about them. Dedicated, hardworking employees. So that's what I would like to close on.
Nice. Well, we wish you nothing but success here at Must Read Alaska, and thank you so much for coming on the show. You're welcome back anytime. And for folks that are listening, maybe just caught the last 5 or 10 minutes, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the whole thing. Food security is a big deal, and Anchorage is where it starts, and the mayor's tackling that. And so you're going to want to go back and listen to that. So until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska signing off. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.